Founders Floor, a co-working accelerator for startups.
So I look at, AR, VR, and AI, machine learning, right? It's funny how we say AI and machine learning like it's one thing all the time. So on the VR side, I have a couple of things I'm excited about. So just to, you asked about the most recent investment. So my most recent investment in that space is a company called GridRaster. It's a seed stage investment I made a few months ago. And what they do is they stream rendered content from the cloud to mobile devices. And the idea is that, we believe that, again, it goes back to the mobile thesis, but we believe that this device is the key to virtual reality.
Expecting a call?
No. Go right ahead. I apologize. Check for updates. Maybe next time. For goodness sake. Cancel.
Maybe just mute would be good.
That's a good point. How about mute? Oh, for the love of God.
But anyhow, so this is going to be the key to virtual reality, right? No one's going to pay $3,000 for a headset when you have something that can do almost everything in your pocket, except that these things are not powerful enough to give you the high fidelity experiences. So GridRaster runs the high fidelity games on a high-powered computer and then streams the content to the mobile device. And of course, that's not very difficult. What's very difficult is that they do that with under 20 millisecond motion to photon latency, given all that turnaround, which you would expect to be way longer than that. So they have a number of patents to get that going. On the machine learning side, my thesis here is that we talk about what's your machine learning thesis, and we can talk about what makes a good machine learning company. But I think what may be more relevant to this crowd is that I've developed a pet peeve at these pitch events when companies come out and say, we're going to use machine learning to do this and that. And it's to the point where at this point I'm asking people just, if you have machine learning in your pitch, take it out. Don't say it. But we do that. Yes, but I don't care. Why? I don't care because what I care about is that you solve a difficult, important problem and a big problem. And how you do that at the end of the day matters less. And saying machine learning isn't going to get you the next meeting. Saying big market, difficult problem, that's going to get you the next meeting. And the other thing that you have to realize about machine learning is that machine learning is not something that you want to use. Machine learning is something that you have to use because nothing else works. If you have a problem that's well defined and there's a lot of certainty, you can just hand code a solution that works 100% of the time. Machine learning doesn't do that. Machine learning doesn't work 100% of the time. It's like a human brain, right? It makes mistakes. So why would you want to use a technology that's not 100% and it's going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to release a product that's going to make mistakes? Why would you want to do that? Because there's no alternative, right? For human vision and object recognition and voice recognition, there's just nothing else that we can do. So be prepared to answer the questions of, how accurate are you and how are you handling your edge cases? And I don't want to go into a whole lecture on this, but
It gets annoying.
I'll stop here.
It gets annoying when everyone starts saying AR, VR, all this stuff, and then they just throw it in there in the pitch thinking it's going to get them the next meeting. It just never does, Yeah. You talked about autonomous driving. I think Bruce did. Both of you maybe talked about it. when are we going to have what's called, I guess, is it level 5 autonomous driving? How many years from now you think before a majority of cars, over 51%, would be autonomously driven? How many think that? 50%. Yeah. What do you think? How many years?
Are you asking both of us?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
It's level 5, 50%?
Over 50% of the cars on the road. Level 5.
Okay. So the issue with level 5 is the edge cases. And edge cases just keep popping up, and you can't, there's no way to know when the next edge case is going to pop up, and you have to have some kind of a solution for it. And when I talk to experts, they are saying it's 15 to 20 years out before that's possible. So first, that needs to be possible before you can build that into cars, right? So, and then you still have to wait for the 50% that you're asking about. And I think, I don't know if that's the relevant metric though, because we do have level 5 at under 25 miles an hour in Mountain View by Google, right? And so it's interesting. I don't know if you guys realize this, but self-driving under 25 miles an hour is basically a solved problem, and highway driving is also basically a solved problem. It's in between that's difficult. Why? So under 25 miles an hour, the car just doesn't move fast enough to cause any major. You can stop on a dime, and over 70 miles an hour, you're on a highway. There's not a whole lot that happens. You just have to keep in the lane and not hit the guy in front of you. That technology was demonstrated in the 80s or maybe even 70s, right? So there were all these technology demonstrators. So it's the issue is when you go 35, 40 miles an hour in the city where someone steps out in front of you, then what do you do? And so that's where most of the edge cases and also the sensors, rain, snow, and then the car that drives in Mountain View doesn't drive in Tahoe and all those things.